Imagine waking up one morning and hearing on the news inflation has increased by 7% this year, or the stock market index rose by 2% today, or the cost of living in Bangalore is 30% higher than 10 years ago. But have you ever wondered how do economists measure these changes? How do governments track inflation? How do investors measure stock market performance? How do businesses compare economic growth across years? The answer lies in a powerful statistical tool called index numbers. Index numbers are one of the most important tools used in economics, finance, data science, and policy making. They help us measure change over time. They simplify complex data into a single number, and they allow economics analysts, investors, and governments to understand trends in prices, production, and economic growth. In this lecture, we will explore index numbers from the ground up, starting from basic definitions all the way to advanced methods like Laspers index, Parse index, Fisher ideal index, chain index, CPI, PPI, stock market indices. By the end of this course, you will not only understand index numbers but also be able to calculate and interpret them like an economist or financial analyst. Let's begin. Let's begin with the most fundamental question. What exactly is an index number? An index number is a statistical measure used to represent the relative change in a variable over time or across locations. In simple terms, an index number tells us how much something has changed compared to a base value. For example, suppose the price of a basket of goods was 100 rupees in the year 2020. Now in 2025, the same basket costs 150 rupees. To measure the change, economists calculate the index number. Index number equal to current value by base value multiply 100. So in this example, index number equal to 150 by 100 and multiply 100. So we got index number equal 150. This means prices increased by 50% compared to the base year. The base year index is always 100. So if the index is 100, no change. Greater than 100 means increase. Less than 100 means decrease. So index numbers help us understand relative change rather than absolute values. This concept is extremely important because economists deal with thousands of variables including prices, production, trade, stock markets, consumer spending. Instead of tracking thousands of numbers, index numbers compress all that information into one meaningful indicator. Index numbers play a critical role in modern economic analysis. They serve several important purposes. First, data simplification. Economic data is massive and complex. Instead of analyzing hundreds of prices, economists summarize them into a single index. Second, trend analysis. Index numbers allow analysts to observe trends over time. For example, is inflation rising? Is production increasing? Is the stock market growing? Third, policy making. Governments rely on index numbers when designing economic policies. Central banks analyze prices indices before deciding whether to raise or lower index rates. Fourth, investment decisions. Investors track stock market indices to evaluate market performance. Fifth, cost of living comparisons. Economists compare living costs across cities using index numbers. Without index numbers, analyzing economic change would be extremely difficult. Index numbers can be classified into several types depending on what they measure. There are four main types. Price index numbers. These measures changes in prices over time. Examples include consumer price index, producer price index, wholesale price index. These indices help economists measure inflation. Second type is quantity index numbers. These measures changes in the quantity of goods produced or consumed. For example, industrial production index. This index tracks how manufacturing output changes over time. Third type is value index numbers. These measures the change in total, which is calculated as value equaled price multiply quantity. This type is useful for analyzing total economic activity. Fourth one is composite index numbers. These combine several indices together to create a broader indicator. For example, a national economic index might combine agriculture, industry, services to measure overall economic performance. Now let's move into the methods of constructing index numbers. The simplest approach is called simple index numbers. These methods treat all items as equally important. There are two main approaches: simple aggregate index, average of relatives method. Let's explore the first method, simple aggregate index. In this method, we simply add up the prices of all items in the current period and divide them by sum of prices in the base period. The formula is index equal to sum of current prices by sum of base prices multiply 100. Although simple, this method has several limitations. First, it ignores the importance of different goods. Second, it is affected by units of measurement. Third, expensive goods dominate the index. Because of these limitations, economists developed better methods.